Hi, I'm Akilero.
And now Rohan.
Welcome to The Long Take. This week we're discussing the new Dune Part 2, which is Denis Villeneuve's sequel to his own movie from 2021. I think what I remember of our first discussion was that we were a little cold but also receptive of some certain things from the first movie. Where do you stand on this one, Rohan?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the first movie at all. Um,
Okay, I guess I was the one that was here and there.
yeah, I wasn't a fan at all, and I tried rewatching it before this one because it just felt like I didn't remember anything and there was so much lore. But then I gave up again, and I just went into this one
I
almost.
just gave up. I was like, I didn't enjoy it, so why would I put myself through it? I just felt like I think what my remembrance is that, emotionally it was cold, but I appreciated the scale and filmmaking of certain.
Yeah, I felt similarly about the first one. I thought it was too cold, and possibly also because I watched it at home. Like, did you watch the first one at home or what?
Yeah. I think we were both locked down, and then it dropped on HBO Max or whatever, and that was the only way to watch it in India at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, this one, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but then I liked it better than the first one. Not by much, but
Yeah, definitely. Although I would probably go a little further, and I would say there were definitely parts of it I enjoyed.
yeah.
But I guess that's comparative to the first one, I guess. I'm saying that.
Compared to the first one, because I had very low expectations and I was kind of apprehensive.
Yeah, it's almost like Villeneuve is benefiting from the fact that he made a not that great movie the first time around. So, and I walked in, I was like, it's gonna he's gonna make the same thing again, right? And then he made it something better.
No, but to be clear, everybody else seems to really like these movies. It's not
Yeah.
whatever, some recent Marvel movie where everyone's like, oh my God, this is a waste of time. In fact, going into this one, people were really hyping, people were like, ye Dark Knight level or something ho gaya kuch. Which I knew that wasn't true. That's almost impossible, especially because I wasn't
If you had stopped me at halftime, I might have still mostly concurred with that hype. But I think the second half sort of dooms it for me, those comparisons.
I mean, so during the first half, you actually thought this was like a Dark Knight level event.
No. I'm saying I would have been willing to go along with that level of hype. I'm like, maybe if it gets better, it can reach there. But just the second half is not a comparison to the first half at all.
No, so my takeaway from this is basically that I enjoyed the action, or most of it, except the last fight.
Right.
And I really didn't.
It just makes no sense.
It was basically like the animal fight, but the opposite of it in many ways because it ended very quickly as opposed to.
Yeah, and I thought they butchered it and it must be better than the novel or something. And I read multiple summaries of the novel, and it seems like it's basically how it happened in the novel. So I'm just like, what?
So he didn't even attempt to make it more dramatic in the movie.
No, yeah, it's just so it just showed up out of nowhere. Everything executes perfectly in that fight, right? They're we come from the south, you come from the north, I come from the west, and no one has any hiccups. Everyone just has a mission, executes it to perfection, and they walk through the emperor's guards as if they're butter.
Oh no, so what I was talking about was the final fight, not the final
Oh, you mean Sid Rotha and...
Yeah. That was a little weird because the movie, they take over the whatever place, right? And Christopher Walken is I am your servant now, whatever. But then that final thing was a little rushed, even in the framework of the larger final scene.
I mean, that tells you the scope of the novel itself, right? That he had to split it into two. And even after that, he's made 2.5 hour movies.
Yeah, and still it feels so. My annoyance with this one was a lot of it, even though this one book has been separated into two very long movies, a lot of it feels like it happens off screen.
And a lot of it, in the first half that I'm complimenting, a lot of it happens in montages. We get one good sequence of Chani and Paul taking down one of those giant machines and dealing with the grasshopper planes. But after that, they just resort to montages. They're they took out this, they could take out this. But I'm like, wait, those things are very elaborate. How did you do that? How did you plan the explosions? How are you destroying it? It's just yeah, it's done. And then suddenly uska legend ban gaya. He's Muad'Dib now. I'm like, I don't feel it. It feels more of, like conveyed through other people's dialogue than I'm feeling it through the filmmaking.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, I wasn't particularly concerned about how they took down those big machines, but I was kind of a little taken aback by how quickly people started calling him the Muad'Dib, and that might have been the point of the movie. Ke matlab it doesn't really take that much to convince. But then there was that one woman, right, with Chani, who was like mocking him initially, and then basically वो एक चीज करता है and then she turns immediately, right? Where I'm like, that felt a little rushed, and just the overall arc of Paul kind of turning into this almost like this tyrant villain it feels like a lot of it just happens elsewhere and we didn't see it. We don't, for example, get any perspective on how people beyond just this one tribe feels about any of this, right? It's all from the perspective of these, I don't even know how many people, like 100, 200 people that he says that are around him, which isn't a lot, right? Like, ठीक है तुम अपने tribe में messiah हो, but what about like the rest of the planets?
Yeah, and what also like made it even weirder for me was that he's just for the entire time he's trying to avoid the South, right? Like, he's like, no, I don't want to South because I have these visions like of this stuff will happen. I can't go to South. Can't go to South. And when they finally reveal the South, there's like like 1 million people living there or more. And somehow these people have just been shrouded in like darkness or whatever, and it's like hidden from all activity. No one can like really see them except like the emperor sort of knew but didn't really do anything about it. I'm just like, what is really happening here? How are so many people like apparently living in seclusion and like hidden from everyone, but also like the emperor somehow knows and hasn't really told anyone about it?
I mean, I don't know now. I haven't read the book, so I don't know how loyal he has been to it or how willing he has been to kind of change certain things. My just broader kind of feeling about all this is that I sense that there was obviously a lot more in the book because obviously, but then the stuff that he has retained, like the core of the story, right? That feels oddly simplistic to me. Like I'll watch, like even a Warcraft movie, say, and kind of find statements about, like the real world, like our world.
Right.
Like I'll watch the Matt Reeves' ka Planet of the Apes and I'll be like, oh, ye to Bible hai,
Yeah.
And here I'm watching it and I'm like, so you had the opportunity to kind of make direct kind of comments about a lot of things, but it always feels like a fantasy, It never feels like here is something in the real world that I'm bothered about and this is why I'm making this movie. Or maybe that's just me because I'm like just very disconnected with this entire kind of franchise.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that much of a problem with, like those sort of things. I mean, I did see like very obviously, I'm sure you can spot as well, like anyone can spot those religious overtones from just like, the naming of the character and the naming of the team around and the garb these people are wearing and stuff like that. Like it's very easy to see like the parallels with that. But I think, yeah, on one level you're right. Like it's not connected to anything that is happening in like, I guess, today's timeline or whatever, right? Which is like, what do you expect from an adaptation? Sometimes is that you're still adapting a book that was written like late 50s for 2024. You would change some ways in where, or maybe like his belief is that basically that the novel is in a way timeless, right? That it would make it needs to like make sense for any time and not just this time. So in that, I guess he's deliberately gone for like not specificity to just make like a parable that would apply if you watch it today or like 30 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because it is kind of like this recurring kind of cycle that happens, right? But then my question is that I'm watching it and I don't know if I'm like meant to question it or meant to just accept it or whatever, or if anybody else is meant to ask questions. But then you watch it and you're like, okay, so this movie is saying that fanaticism is bad and that blind faith is kind of something that you might want to, be concerned about or worried about.
And it's also showing that how these things have been done over history, right? Like that, we have created our own myths and our own stories and then sort of like religion has always been used as a kind of tool, right? When you don't have answers, then there's either when there's not scientific knowledge or something, you use that as a tool to sort of like suppress the mass and be like, oh yeah, have fun with this, like, you know, you drink the Kool-Aid.
But that also feels like a little surface level to me, which is always in conflict with like just the sheer amount of complexity in terms of what the movie wants you to learn, right? कि ये tribes हैं, इसमें ये 4 semi tribes हैं, ये इस बंदे का नाम है. All that stuff feels so overwhelming. And then when you look at the movie, you're like, oh, okay, so you're saying that religious fundamentalism is bad, right? That's it, right? It's almost like the Matrix, which Matrix feels so complicated, but then what the movie is trying to say is not very challenging at all. And for some reason, I'm expecting more, right? Because I can see the ambition visually, and I'm wishing that there was a similar level of ambition in terms of just thematic complexity.
Yeah, I guess that's fair to expect. And I think what disappointed me sometimes actually more from outside of that was like, there's always like a sense of with these movies is that, you know, some people are hanging around because they're going to be more important the next time around. And I really had that issue with like both Florence Pugh and Lea Seydoux. And it feels like, you know, they're given presence here just because they're going to be more important.
So that is something I read later, right? But then while watching the movie, because everybody has such, I mean, there's so many characters, it just felt like they were part of a larger ensemble. It didn't feel like they're being kind of saved for later. It just felt like, oh, this is the movie.
I mean, the fact that it's like when you drop in, you know, actors of that level, I think a moment I can notice that, you know, this is like not enough work for them. Like Florence Pugh is he doing like a semi-narration sometimes and appearing in probably 3 scenes in the entire movie. I'm like, yeah, there's no way she signed up for this.
Yeah, possible. I mean, I remember actually getting annoyed in the first movie because Zendaya had like one scene in it.
Yeah, she literally appeared at the end. That was literally like, I think they could have cut the movie. Like we discussed so much about that, right? Like the way the first movie ends is garbage, and they really need to like either just chop that off or like just like let, you know, Paul and like Jessica's fate be unknown at the end of that movie would have probably been better, and introduce Chani and Stilgar and the Freeman in the second movie. The fact that he really wanted to introduce the Freeman at the end, have that fight with Yamis. And then suddenly, like, in the second movie, like, he's, for the beginning, or at least for, like, 40, 50, I think even longer than that, he has this sort of, like, guilt with over Jamis' death, right? Because in the vision, he's seen that he was going to be my friend, but then I had to kill him. And it's sort of disconnected now because Jamis is missing from this movie. He died in the last...
I mean, you may as well be talking Greek right now. I have no idea who these people are.
That's the guy he had the duel with, remember, at the end of the first film, who challenged him.
No idea who this was.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. The part with Freeman should not have happened in the first movie. It's because it happens so early, and then there's the way to end.
Are you talking about
literally end the movie as by like walking?
Are you talking about the dude who they kind of do like a funeral for in the first scene?
Yeah. So that guy challenged Paul to like a duel at the end of the first movie.
And then for some reason I'd forgotten that Jason Momoa isme nahi hai, which was very disappointing to me. Because I remember liking...
Oh, no. So I distinctly remember like him dying and not feeling much because they hadn't done a lot with this character. And you're supposed to feel that.
No. So that...
Because, you know, he's like a close like...
That I didn't remember at all, him dying. And obviously I didn't remember because I didn't really care for anybody. But then I did remember that when Jason Momoa comes in the first movie is the only time I felt that there's life in it. Because otherwise everybody's just so dull.
Right. Yeah, it's very
and
dumb.
He kind of is, yeah.
I think, yeah, although like I also remember like Josh Brolin dying, so like when he reappeared, I was like, what? This dude's alive?
Meko to honestly yaad nahi tha. All I knew was that Josh Brolin was writing poems for Timothy Chalamet on this movie. So I knew that he's in it.
That is not.
But yeah, otherwise, so there's too many people. Like I had no memory of what's her name? His mother, for instance. I knew that she was kind of egging him on to, she was kind of nefarious, but I didn't remember much about her. I didn't, it took me a while to remember that his father was dead, for instance.
Right. Yeah. You basically like had to like do like watch a recap YouTube video basically instead of watching the entire movie again.
Yeah, which I didn't do either. But then it wasn't like I was bothered by the movie. Like it wasn't like I was at sea, you know.
Right.
Watching this one, it's fairly like easy to comprehend.
Yeah.
Like very...
They ensure like as this, you know, they introduce like iska funeral ho raha hai. they show like father in like a portrait on like a few like a Dune or
Yeah.
whatever. So they make sure that people are like clued in.
Also, like to a degree, this movie is very clear about what's important and what's not important. Like it doesn't bog you down with like, here, let me explain like the mechanics of that force field, you know,
Right. Yeah.
which some moron like some Indian like Leo director would have taken like full 15 minute का scene just to be like, ये हमने यहाँ बनाया था, ये अब इसको ऐसे बटन दबाओगे तो ऐसे होगा, and then they'll do like a demonstration, all that stuff. He just presses a button and he gets a force field and that's all you need. Like
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I'm like, chalo theek hai, we're moving on. We're not like lingering on meaningless stuff. But then again, I would have liked some like actual human like scenes. Everything feels very like, अब यहाँ जाना है, अब वो करना है, अब mission ये है, now this is the mini mission, now this is the
I
objective.
mean, I think it's just like that is just a I think consequence of the book itself. It just has so much to deal with that
yes.
he's gonna end up probably with like a 2 4 hour movies if he starts to pause between scenes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't never want to go like the Peter Jackson route, but then there is a way to make this cleaner, especially with like the very basic story that you're dealing with. Like there is a way to make this a Western where nobody really speaks and you get a full idea of what the kind of scope of the narrative is. But then this movie kind of, both movies in fact, feel like they have one foot in either side. Like they want to be this kind of spare epic, but they also want to be like an old-fashioned fantasy, you know, with like proper lore and stuff. Where you're like, oh, I know, 10,000 साल पहले ये tribe वहाँ का था, you know, which I'm like, I don't really care about that.
Although what I found like, this movie also does better than the first one, I think, which also like helped is the fact that I think he understood like Javier Bardem's like characters like basically lunacy of like how gone that character is in terms of like, you know, it's like he's almost like he's keep convincing himself of like Paul's like imagined like, you know, like whatever like fantasy.
Yeah.
And basically that in a way that movie is benefits from that because like he becomes like in a way like just like a joke. Like, you know, every time like Paul does something which like is nearly miraculous, he's like, this will be.
Yeah. No, I really liked Javier Bardem's performance also in this role because initially he doesn't play it as broadly comic initially as opposed to later. So initially it's actually like grave, like, oh my God, you are the Messiah types.
Yeah.
And it's very serious. But then as the movie progresses, he becomes more and more comedic in his delivery. Like he's becoming kind of deranged, which I felt was a neat kind of escalation. And you wouldn't really imagine Javier Bardem as like the comedic presence in any movie.
I mean, he did
but
well in that Bond movie.
Which one?
When he appeared as a villain, like he was like, you know, like menacingly like funny enough for me.
I mean, yeah, he was a Bond villain, but not like he's eliciting laughs, right, with everything.
Yeah, sure.
But I was kind of impressed with Javier Bardem in this movie more than anybody else actually.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, some actors don't even get a chance, right? I already spoke about two, and then the one carryover from the previous movie, Dave Bautista, like he's just like,
oh my God,
handled well.
so bad in this, but he's also bad in this.
He's also bad, but I think he's just like he's not like given anything to do. He's like uske jabasti because they need to set up like Fer Rotha as like the new incumbent whatever coming in. Raban is basically turned into this like dud, you know, like who turns up in every scene and like is snapping necks, throwing people into like their monitors and being like, "Tum kaam kyun nahi kar rahe ho?" And he just
yelling.
He's just look incompetent. They make him look important, and the movie needs to make him do that so that they can introduce Foy Ratha as the he can do better.
Oh no, but now that you mentioned Pedro, I like Roston Butler.
Yeah, he was good. I mean, he was for like I think 5 minutes he was actually unrecognizable to me. I was like, wait, where is Austin Butler? He's supposed to be in this movie, and he was like, wait, that's him.
Yeah. He was pretty good in not just like the over the top villain stuff, but like there was that one scene with
and even the filmmaking is over the top, right? Because they're like, we're just gonna drain the color so much that it became black and white.
I mean, it was a little funny to me. Okay, oh, you're doing this now, but whatever. Like, but then as I was saying, like he's good in those villainous kind of moments where he's just, you know, licking his teeth or whatever. But then there's also that one scene with Stellan Skarsgård where he kind of leans in for a kiss or something.
Yeah.
It's like
and one scene they actually kiss also, no? Both like twice each other.
twice. वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ.
Yeah.
First they do, and then he goes in for another one, which I'm like, ooh. That's a choice. But then I think more than just anything, I appreciated like the experience of it. Like I didn't mind, I didn't get bored or didn't get annoyed or
Yeah,
anything.
that was actually like I think a bonus as well. Like I remember the first movie distinctly getting like being like, can we move it along? And this movie, like I didn't feel like the length of it,
Same, yeah.
which I guess is like a credit to Denis Villeneuve. And then it's just, I think it feels just like more confident, which I guess is in a way he's benefiting from the fact that, you know, he's done the hard work, right? He set up the lore and the backstory in the first movie, the exposition like of like, oh, look, this is how the spaceship works. Oh, no, this is how Arrakis works. This is why Arrakis is important. This is why how he used spice. So because he's done all that sort of like legwork for himself, I think he's sort of freed in the sequel to do like no other stuff.
Maybe. But that being said, it's not like I remembered anything and I still kind of didn't feel like I was missing, you know, like I need an explanation. Right. So I think primarily what the difference is that we watched the first one at home and this one we watched, I'm guessing you watched it on like IMAX or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and all of this movie is on IMAX, like it's IMAX ratio and everything. And it's like really, the screening that I was in, it was loud, like loud to the point of seats rattling in every scene.
Yeah. Especially the sandworm sequence. That was like proper like hair raising stuff.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the best like action set pieces I've seen in a very long.
Which is amazing because there's no actually action happening in it. Just one dude or a CGI monster.
Or a CGI monster, you barely even see him. You don't see his face at all, and you very rarely cut away to other people. But it's just sound, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it work.
It's a setup, right? I think it's a build up to it properly. Of, you know, that tiny voice, which like, you know, like shakes and like vibrates and sort of calls the monster. Then he's sort of like waiting in the right position. He's fixing positions. Then obviously like they build up with dialogue. They're like, oh wait, he's called a grandfather. And okay.
No, but correct me if I'm wrong. Do they explain it? Because I remember like I was watching that sequence and I am learning as the sequence goes along. Like I have no idea that this is what he was aiming to do. Like I had no idea that he was supposed to ride a sandworm.
Oh, I think there's like a very brief like distant shot. Like there's one shot where Chani and Paul are sitting on a dune together and they like kiss for a bit or whatever. And the distance, Stilgar is riding a sandworm and he asks, you know, like, will I ever get to do that sort of stuff or whatever? And she's like, you will never be an actual like, you know, free ride. You're like a adopted one or whatever.
Oh, so my enjoyment of it was then based mostly on like just discovering. No, so when he puts that device in the thing, I'm like, okay, so he's summoning a sandworm, right? That much I understand. But then when the sandworm comes, I have no idea that he's going to get on it. And when he gets on it, I have no idea that he's going to ride it.
Lost it. You're like, ये क्या हो गया?
हाँ, I'm like, ये तो बड़ा cool हो रहा है. So I mean, yeah, so it helps when you walk in blind, I guess.
Yeah. Which helped me, like, you know, I haven't been dealing with news coverage for like months now, or maybe a year now. So I didn't know that Anna Taylor-Joy is going to show up for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, that I kind of knew. I read some Twitter or something.
Exactly.
Oh,
I think being out of the news cycle, you can actually like enjoy these sort of moments, which like just get destroyed for you if you have to like follow this stuff.
Which felt very Arrival, right? I don't know if it's in the book, but then just that flash forward to
I don't know if the exact thing is in the book, but what is actually in the book, which they've changed, is that Alia gets born like much earlier.
Achha.
So like she's actually kidnapped by the Emperor and stuff, and then they go free her as part of the final.
Oh, so this is very like
actually no,
very much.
She gets kidnapped, and they also removed that. So the one thing that movie does not do well for me is that it does not cut. You never feel time pass very well, right? Like when they show the montage, I would assume like 3-4 months or whatever parts. But in the books, like it's much longer. So I don't know if that's what Denis is going for. But in the books, it's like years. Years pass as they're doing this guerrilla warfare and stuff. So in the books, they like Chani and Paul end up having a kid who they end up calling Leto. And then that Leto dude is like killed in some like Emperor raid. So that I guess Denis is like, wait, ये पैदा हुआ ये मर गया तो उसको निकाल देते हैं.
That makes full sense. Yeah, I would have been so like...
Which it's also like benefits because you need that. You have to remove it to figure out because he's changed Chani's arc, right? Chani ends up as like, you know, like Lady Jessica in the book. Like she ends up being concubine, like that. So Irulan is gonna be the wife, and she's gonna be the concubine. But here, like they've changed it, right? They've given her more agency. She's not okay with the arc he's going or with the path he's taken, and she ditches him, which is completely new.
Oh, that's pretty cool then. That was a major change then.
Yeah.
There you go. And she's like, the only one who kind of rebels, right? She walks away, and then there's
everyone else is given in by that point,
including Josh Brolin, who जिसका मुझे motivation समझ नहीं आया. He's not religious or anything. He just wants like fight or something.
I think he's just like, oh yeah, wait, I could fight the entire great house is amazing.
Yeah, and he's just like loyal to
what reminded me, like, because I was showing my brother and he mentioned, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, it's basically, if you look at it, like Paul's turn second half, and now what the party's going on is basically what happened to Daenerys Targaryen in like the last season. Like he set out with this like goal of avenging my whatever ancestors' death. I'm gonna like kill those people, achieve that, and then he suddenly like he's going like step further. He's like, screw it, I'm just gonna like destroy King's Landing, which his equivalent is he's gonna destroy all the great houses.
Yeah, I mean Daenerys ka to tha, and people had an issue with it being rushed, but I felt that I thought of Daenerys also, and I was like, whatever, I don't really care. But in this one though, I genuinely felt that it was rushed, because it was literally after he drinks that Gatorade thing
and he wakes up, he's like, I'm a new character now.
He's a different character, right? It's not like overnight he's contemplating ke ye ho sakta hai, wo ho sakta hai, this, that, making more.
Moment he can see like all the futures, like basically like Doctor Strange now. He's like, I know everyone's future, so now this is what I need to do, this is who I need to become. I'm Harkonnen now. I'm like, okay.
Did you watch that documentary, that the Bobby Wine documentary?
I have actually, yeah.
So there's that one scene in the Bobby Wine documentary, right, where Bobby Wine is being interviewed by somebody, and that person, the journalist, is like, listen, do you worry about being corrupted by power? Like, if you end up winning, which is unlikely, but if you do you worry? And Bobby Wine is like, yes, I worry about it every day, because I heard like Mussolini say what I am saying now 30 years ago, right? So I know the perils of what I'm heading down. Like, I know what could happen, right? And I'm like, that is such an important, like, it's not like it was written, it's not like a narrative movie or anything, right? But a scene like that would have run wonders for Dune, because here it's like, oh, ye to ban gaya na Villeneuve.
Yeah.
But then I didn't like, I know Dune, so I know that he's going to turn into a villain before I'm watching this movie. But then watching the movie, I'm like, maybe we needed a scene or two of him actually contemplating the influence that he's kind of developing on these people.
Yeah, or maybe like a scene like with some other character as well, right? Like maybe give an extra scene to like the new Reverend Mother Jessica, of like, cause she's the one like instigating all of this, right? She's the one spreading his like word of his like acclaims and stuff to like, and she's willingly like, she wants like a holy war, like she's brought this on, like so maybe like you have done something there. But yeah,
speaking of holy war, my favorite Denis Villeneuve movie is Incendies, right? And then again, it's a movie about religion and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there was that movie did like, it made such important kind of statements about religion back in the day,
about suffering
more than like basically us picture mein, it's essentially there's a character who's born Christian, right? And then through some twist of fate he ends up becoming a Muslim, and then he ends up inflicting the worst kind of crime against his own mother. And it's just like this grand statement of how arbitrary religion is, and how pointless it all is, and it's this weird cycle of violence that people are trapped into, and once they kind of satisfy this weird itch to kill people of the other religion, then they turn against each other, and it makes all those points, right? And now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, these are ideas that you've been concerned about for years and years, which is probably why you're returning to them here via Dune. Or maybe it was the other way around, like he was a fan of Dune first. And
I think that's what he said, yeah, he's been like a fan of Dune early on.
So
and he's had ideas to like, what he wanted to do with it, but as a kid, he's like, I'm not going to get to actually do this. And then he grew up to be this filmmaker who could actually do it.
The irony is then that he has already said everything that he could have about.
On a much smaller scale.
Yeah, and much more impactfully.
Yeah.
So right now, this is pure just like flexing, right? कि इतना पैसा आ गया तो अभी हम बड़ा picture बनाएंगे. which I guess is fine.
Yeah. I have no idea. Like, I mean, he's gonna have to do massive changes if he's gonna wrap up somehow this story in the next one.
No, everybody likes this. Keep forgetting. He has no change to make. He just do the same thing
How
over
can he
and
like
people will come.
make no changes if he's gonna? Because aren't they like 6 novels and he has like 1 film left? So how is he gonna adapt the next novel somehow and then just stop?
I think the goal is just to adapt a third one and then that's
And
it.
Paul dies or whatever, and then he's like, I don't care about this world anymore.
No, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not
Because the
really
only thing I
invested.
know about the next novel is that it picks up like 12 years after where the story ends in this one. So
Huh.
unless he makes some dramatic changes, like, on like he waits a while for people to grow up, he's gonna have to do something different.
Yeah. Maybe by then Timmy is more has a bigger presence on screen because अभी तो काफी struggle करता है वो, you
Or
know.
we'll just do CGI stuff and make them age them up.
If that helps, yeah, sure.
Right, time to wrap it up.
Yep.
Okay, that's all for this episode of The Long Take. And follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Threads at The Long Take Pod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review wherever this episode, and we will see you next week, or maybe even this week again. That's all. Bye bye.